We have been guilty of often saying that conservative groups are targeted and that really there is bias all over this administration. We could go to another thing besides Benghazi. There are breaking things coming out, facts coming out all the time, reports coming out that there has been some targeting by IRS officials, the Internal Revenue Service, against conservative groups, Pat. Ed Morrissey writes, a federal watchdog's upcoming report says senior Internal Revenue Service officials, new agents, were targeting Tea Party groups in 2011. The disclosure contradicts public statements by former IRS Commissioner Douglas Schuman, who repeatedly assured Congress that conservative groups were not targeted. That report says the head of the IRS division that oversees tax-exempt groups learned that groups were being targeted in June 2011. It does not say whether Schuman was notified. Yesterday, the IRS claimed that this only happened in one office in just 2012 and that only lower-level officials were involved. But this report from the Associated Press, Terry, it refutes both of those claims and adds yet another damning example of a growing list of misleading and false statements from the Obama administration.
You know, there's people listening to us out there from all walks of life, and a lot of liberals listening, and people to the left listen to us. And I get sick and tired of getting their email and their comments about, well, it's always a conspiracy theory. These conservatives, these pastors of America are always blaming the liberals and saying they're under the gun and under attack. Well, Joe, what can these liberals say now? In fact, a leading CPA, and I will not give his name, in Wichita, Kansas, a leading CPA in this city, many people would know exactly who this guy is if I gave you his name. He has made this statement. He said the IRS will never apologize unless they're in serious trouble, unless they have been caught red-handed. And I can tell you, this story is going to be on the news all this week. By this time on Sunday evening, you can begin to see what the breaking news of the week's going to be. And I'm telling you, the Tea Party, conservative Christians, I mean, who would have ever dreamed that being a conservative Christian in America has become dangerous? You know, we're called bigoted, we're called haters, we're called all kinds of things by mainstream media today, and yet here it is. And I think, I really think that the child has been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I really do.
I think you're exactly right.
Whenever a liberal Democrat named Kucinich says that this is absolutely wrong and dangerous and it should not have been done, that is an astounding thing, because he's taking a stand against his own administration, and he is so liberal, it's unbelievable that I heard him say that.
Well, the CPA here in town who says you can bet if the IRS apologizes for anything, it's something big enough that they know they need to apologize. And I believe that is exactly right. Absolutely. Because we've all dealt with the IRS before, and they apologize for nothing.
Well, yeah, when have you ever been apologized? Representative Joe Edwards is with us. He is a representative. He's elected this past election. He represents a district here in Kansas, in the House of Representatives of Kansas. Joe, I tell you, do you think this story has legs, and what do you think the outcome is going to be?
Yes, I think it has legs, and you know, Brother Joe brought up the fact that it was supposedly only happened in one office. That office was in Ohio, and we know now that there was more fraud in the Ohio elections throughout the entire state than any other state in the entire United States.
Joe, let me interrupt you a second. This is a point you're making that I've never heard yet tonight, and I think it's valid. Go back and give a little history about Ohio when you use that illustration, because it's very interesting that this IRS controversy is out of Ohio also. Give our listeners a little bit of why you would use that as an example.
Well, if you remember back during the election time, they were always talking about it. It's going to boil down to Ohio, whether Ohio goes for Romney or whether it goes for Obama. And before, you know, under George W. Bush, it was whether Florida would go for it, and then whether Florida would go for it or Ohio would go for it. And the way has turned that Ohio was the hot point in America. The reason why is now we find out that they were using computers that had been doctored, and this is not just speculation. It is a fact now that they found out that some of those precincts that got 100%, not 99.9%, 100%.
You'd think they'd be smart enough to cover it up a little better than that, wouldn't you?
I mean, are they that dumb not to cover it up better than that?
Well, they evidently are, because in districts where it was 4% Republican, you was lucky to have at least 1 or 2% that was for the Republican person, but all of a sudden 100%. And they had 9 different, if I remember right, it's 9 different districts or election precincts that had 100% Obama.
I'll tell you guys, it reminds me of that TV show that's out there that shows how these dumb thieves get caught. You know, they drive up to the roadblock with the mask still on. They forgot to take their mask off, and you know, I don't think the Democrat Party's much smarter.
They tried to make it out that this all started, this computer deal started under George W. Bush, but then they found out that the guy that was doing it was a Democrat out of Florida that was making these allegations, and he had said he'd been a Republican for 25 years. They went back and found out that he was a Democrat for the last 40 years, and so you know they was able to tear that down. But this guy has been writing these programs and trying to get people to buy into it for several years, and finally somebody evidently did buy into it, and we got it going on. Now the IRS is saying, and it was supposed to be in one of these precincts, that this IRS office there out of Cleveland, I believe it was, that was saying that they had done just a few things, and I believe they put it to light because they wanted to spin it this way.
You know, let me ask you.
It wasn't only in Ohio, but it was also in the D.C. area.
Let me.
The United States is going on.
Let me lay this on the table, and any of you can respond to this on our panel. I know that it's a fact now. This, what we're talking about, you liberals are listening. This is not theory or a hypothesis. This is fact. The IRS has been caught. More is going to come out. My question to this, and if you're following us on Answering the Call Facebook, I hope that you're doing that. You can respond. Dr. D is getting great responses tonight to this. But I wonder this: what can be done? Is there any hope for us? It appears, guys, that Boehner is just sold out to the moderates and maybe even the liberals. I mean, what protection do we have? What hope do we have now that we know the IRS has turned their guns toward conservatives? Can we do anything?
Well, you know, a lot of people are talking about how big a deal this is, and it is a big deal, Pat. And it's something that is strictly, totally against the law. And the IRS is supposed to be neutral when it comes to treating everyone the same. We're supposed to be treated equally always. And this is a big deal in abusing the tax system to gain an advantage over your political opposition.
Let me say, I believe it can even determine our life in that the IRS is supposed to oversee the Obamacare, and they're the ones that are going to determine who gets what and where and when and how. And to me, this is the most dangerous domestic thing next to the gun laws that we have on the board right now. This is dangerous. This is ungodly, and it's against the law, basically.
Representative Edwards, let me tell you, I think Pat Bullock has hit a home run here, which he oftentimes does. I understand that because of Obamacare, there's going to be thousands and thousands of new IRS agents hired. Am I dreaming that, or is that true?
No, you're not dreaming that. Last I heard, there was 18,000.
18,000.
18,000 as of right now. But I heard just this last Tuesday, I think it was, that could almost triple over the next year and a half because of all the different little aspects. You remember Pelosi said we've got to pass it to
read it. Yeah, got to pass it so we can read it.
Yeah, now we're finding out what's in it, and it's a disgrace for legislators all over the United States because a lot of people have been doing that. I don't do that in here to speak. If I have a bill, I try to read through it. I may not understand every aspect of that bill, but I try to read through it, and I ask questions, and a couple times I told them, this is embarrassing, but I really don't know what this means. Somebody explain it to me.
But you don't.
It ought to be going on. We ought to be explaining the bills to ourselves and find out what the bill says before we vote in some piece of legislation.
But you don't. But you don't vote for the darn thing so that you can read it later.
No.
No. You vote on it after you've read it and know exactly what's going on. Because if you don't do that, then you got what we've got now, chaos with Obamacare. And I know we was talking about IRS, but they tie together so beautifully. Obamacare is going to be the downfall of a lot of different bureaucracies.
It's a big deal. It really is, and a lot more is coming down the line. You're listening to Answering the Call with Pastors Joe Wright, Terry Fox, and Pat Bullock. We're going to be right back. We hope you'll stay tuned. In our next segment, we're going to talk about something else you won't want to miss. So stay tuned and call a friend.